Welcome to the How Did They Do It Real Estate Podcast. Have you ever wondered how people succeed in real estate and what steps they took to get there? If so, this podcast is for you. Your hosts, Sayla and Eileen Prack, interview top experts in the real estate community to share with you their real estate journey and how they achieved massive success. Our goal is to provide you with valuable real estate resources and to help you apply it to your own real estate goal. Welcome to today's episode of the How Did They Do It Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Eileen Prack, and today our guest is Derek Dombeck, and he is an expert ranging from creative deal structuring, wholesaling, flipping, and landlording to lending and investing throughout the years within real estate. He also co-owns a private lending company called Best REI Funding, a real estate acquisition company, and hosts 3 national mastermind groups called REI Circle of Trust. So Derek, welcome to the show, and how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
I am very excited about this interview today because we're going to get into a little bit about creative financing and how we can utilize the different opportunities in our areas to still get into real estate, even though you might think there's no path and no way for you to close. And so I'm super excited to deep dive into this topic a little bit and hopefully gain some additional knowledge from you, Derek.
Yeah, we've been through a lot of different types of deals over the years, and my favorites are definitely the ones that are creative and can solve a homeowner's problem without using cash or much of it. And to me, cash is the lazy way of buying, although we'll still buy that way, but it's not as much fun.
So Derek, before we dive in, can you share with us a little bit more about your background and how you got started with real estate?
Yeah. So I am a former construction worker with a PhD, a public high school diploma. So, I got into this in 2003 with my wife, Tracy. And just like many, we bought a couple of fixer-upper rental properties in our home area, which is in Wisconsin. And I am of the nature where I kind of jump in and do stuff and learn as I go. So I don't get analysis paralysis ever because I'm not analytical. So within the first 2 months in real estate, we bought a couple of duplexes close to home, but we also committed to build some new construction projects in Florida and continue to do that for the first few years. And everything we did was bank financed. I didn't know any other way. My wife and I had good jobs. We had good credit. Banks were throwing money at us, and we thought we were God's gift to real estate investing because we were so super smart. And
you had your PhD, right? So
I had a PhD and, put lines of credit against our personal house and was using that till 2007 when the real estate markets crashed. And at that point, my wife and I were at about 29 doors, about a $4 million portfolio between our Wisconsin and Florida real estate, and pretty much lost it all. Fortunately, we didn't lose our personal residence, but the Florida real estate is what really took us down. And we learned a lot of hard lessons between 2007 and 2010 because it was not a flip a switch and it's over scenario. Things dragged out a long time. But through all of that, I learned after the fact that was a blessing. It was a blessing in disguise. It did not feel like a blessing for a few years, but that forced us to become creative because there wasn't a bank in the world that was going to touch us for a while. And the other thing that we made, probably our biggest mistake that we now know, we never built a network. We never really built a team. Our original network was this married couple that we bought our very first duplexes from. To this day, they're still some of our best friends 18, 19 years later. But that was our network and it was local. So moving forward, when we got into 2010, 11, and 12, we started to embrace and reach out to people, build relationships. Ended up meeting my current business partner, Jeff. And when I met Jeff, he had never used a bank to buy any real estate. And he started pretty close to the same time that I did. And it really intrigued me. Said, how is that possible? I mean, to me, banks were the cheapest option, but it was very much based off of our jobs, which we wanted to leave. I mean, our ultimate goal was to quit our jobs, right? So Jeff taught me, and he also taught me how sometimes he was a lender using other people's money as well on a small basis. So we started up companies together and we started flipping houses together. We didn't hold a lot of rentals throughout the early 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 timeframe because I was still trying to rebuild. I needed the cash. And we got to a point where we're getting better and better at raising private capital. Then we couldn't find enough deals to keep the money busy. So we didn't want to lose our investors. Most of them were smaller, mom and pop. California numbers, you would probably chuckle. But for us, our median price points, even today in our markets, are $150,000 to $250,000. So we were raising $100,000 here, $100,000 there, and we didn't want our investors to go somewhere else. So we started ramping up our lending business. We pay our investors 9% for their money, and we lend it out at 12% and a few points. So we looked at that arbitrage model, and we quickly realized, I shouldn't say quickly, it took some time, but we realized we had very little competition in that space compared to the competition for buying fixer-upper flips or rental properties. And over the last few years, that has become our our main business is our hard money lending company. And our average month now is about 20 to 25 loans a month going out the door. And it all came from just learning as we went and constantly trying to perfect it. I mean, there's never any system that will ever be 100% perfect, but our lending company is built on 100% private capital. We don't have any institutional money or institutional influence on our decision making, which is really great for our clients when we lend money out. We're not selling off the loans. And when COVID hit, for example, the national hard money companies were selling most of their loans off. And when the clients ran into end of their loan period, they had nobody to talk to. How can I get an extension? Who can I work with when there's a challenge? And when COVID hit, those hard money companies were selling to hedge funds, and hedge funds stopped buying. So many people lost their hard money sources in 2020, right around April and May, which was a great time for us to push the accelerator and ramp up, which is what we did. So that's the short version of about 19 years.
Wow. So you and your wife had gotten up to 29 doors, and the Florida market was basically the market area that contributed significantly to the loss of the property and the valuation, and basically took you down to ground zero, and then you had to rebuild from there.
Yeah, rebuild from ground zero with I don't even know what my credit score was, in whatever it was, in a toilet. And that was scary. And on a personal note for us, which I don't always talk about, but my wife and I in that same time frame found out we couldn't have children naturally. So we were trying to raise money to pay for in vitro fertilization several times and ultimately adoptions. So it really, what people don't talk about on these real estate based podcasts too much is the personal life still happens. You're trying to grow your business. You're trying to do everything you can for bottom line or your net worth or whatever you want to call it. But that doesn't stop life from happening, and sickness and deaths and children and all these other things. And that was so eye-opening for us. I mean, we adopted my son from China, and I literally had to damn near sell my soul to somebody private to get the money to pay for my son's adoption. And you just figure it out. You don't quit. So it's been an interesting ride.
That's a really good point that you brought up, because we always talk about the upsides within real estate, and we don't hear too many things about like the bad times and what happens during that, and how are people surviving afterwards when, bills need to be paid, food needs to be on the table, like what happens during that time. And so as you were looking and you were trying to figure out a path forward for you and your growing family, what were some of the things that you focused on also to offset some of those cost of living and just being able to survive during that time?
I come from a background of, I still take somebody at their word. I believe in a handshake, and I believe in work ethic. So the only thing I knew how to do was work 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. I went to my job. My wife went to her job, and I was at a project house every night, every weekend for as long as it took. The downside to that is I wasn't around for the first 3 years of my oldest child's life. I was living in the same house, but there was many times that I would just call my wife 10 o'clock at night and say, I'm just going to work all night. I'll sit down on the floor and take a nap if I get too tired. And then an hour nap, I'll get up and keep working. So many of those Friday nights and Saturday nights, I was 30 to 100 miles away from home, taking a quick nap on the floor and then get up and start swinging a hammer again, doing whatever I had to do. And looking back, it's what also makes me now appreciate what I do today. Like I get to help homeowners that are in those situations, that are in those foreclosure, bankruptcy estates, or they've got medical bills, you name it, right? All the different problems that people have. And I can sit across the kitchen table from them and say, I know how you feel without lying. And they can see it in my eyes. I truly am there to help them through their financial turmoil. That's the blessing I got when we were forced to learn how to get creative. So I love it. I absolutely, the passion that myself, my wife, our business partner, what we do to help people today, we just know if we help enough people, we'll make enough money to support our families.
At what point did you change or shift your focus a little bit from just plain survival mode to be able to think and explore other options like the creative financing model?
So I took on a business partner previous to Jeff, and that business partner had no experience in flipping, but he had the desire and the credit. And that worked for about 3 years. So that took us from about 2008 to 2010, let's say. But I still had the mindset of we had to use banks. That was the only way I knew, right? That business partnership eventually came to an end, and I still didn't have the credit to go out and do it on my own. So in that time frame, I had started studying options, using leases, master leases, subject to purchases, seller financing, whether it's a land contract, notes, mortgages. So I was in absolute study mode so that when the right deal came along, I did know at least the basic knowledge on how to structure a deal. So about the same time I met Jeff, my business partner today, I had this base knowledge, and together we started to grow that. And we started looking at deals in a way where our cash offers are actually by design are the least desirable offer we make. So typically I'm going to make 2 to 3 to 4 different types of offers on every deal that comes across my desk.
I'd love to ask, maybe what are some of the most creative types of structures that you're able to put together or that you've come across so far?
Well, let me ask you this. What do you consider when you think about creative, real estate creative deal structuring? What do you feel is creative?
Something that somebody would typically not know about versus, like going to the banks or using a syndication model, raising capital from other people's money to be able to purchase something like that. Seller financing is also a type of creative model, but people know about seller financing as well. So I guess, is there anything above and beyond that you could share with us?
Yeah. So the way I like to, this is my definition of it. You have strategies. So subject to purchases, leases, options, notes and mortgages, land contracts, those are all strategies. To me, creative deal structuring is when you stack strategies to solve the problem of that seller. So it may only be one strategy, maybe purchasing the property subject to and alleviating their stress of the monthly payment is the only strategy you have to use. But the structure, the creative structure, can't be really brought up or brought to fruition until you know what is the needs of the seller. So I like to get as many answers to as many questions as possible from the seller and then start to structure using different strategies. So I'll give you a quick story of one that was actually pretty basic. I had a seller named Randy, and these are all deals that we've done in the last couple of years. So this is, during the current market. This isn't stuff from 10 years ago it works any market, anytime. But Randy was a lead that came in. He wanted to retire from his job, and He wanted to move from Wisconsin to South Dakota within 6 days after retiring from his job. Did not want to deal with a realtor. Had 2 mortgages on the property totaling $132,000. He wanted $150,000 was his bottom line. And the house would be worth, if you stuck $50,000 into it, it'd be worth about $225,000 to $245,000. Okay. And a nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch house, cookie cutter type of stuff. The challenge with that is my cash offer was $125,000 max in order to stick 50 into it and, do the boring method. So in talking with Randy, and I'm just asking question after question after question, and I'll give you my elevator pitch here in a second. So I'll show your audience how I get people to open up. But he's telling me all these things. So I'm okay, how do we structure this to make sense for you? One of the things he had told me was, I don't want to deal with a realtor. I don't want people coming through my house. I don't want to have to fix anything on a home inspection report. I just want to get $150,000 and leave and be done. It was near the fall of the year, so we're coming up on possible snow removal. We've got leaves are falling that has to be cleaned up. And if he hired a realtor and moved to South Dakota, somebody has to maintain all of that. And he didn't want to deal with it. So after knowing all of that, I said, okay, Randy, if I could get you your $150,000, you would be happy with that? And he said, yes. I said, great. What if it took me a little bit of time? Is that okay? And of course, his question is going to be how much time? And I said, well, if you were to list with a real estate agent, how long of a contract would you typically sign? Most of us know the answer would be 6 months. So I'm leading him to answers that I already know what the answer is. And I said, great. If you would give me 6 months, I'm going to come in and put some money into your property at my discretion to take care of some challenges that would come up on a home inspection report. And then I'm going to sell it. And my profit will be whatever I sell it for over and above the 150. Does that work for you? And he really liked that. So we structured that as a lease and an option. Okay. I needed the lease so I had the legal right to come in and use the property. I'm not using it to live in it, but I'm using it to work on it and improve it. So he moved out October 6th. And we went in there. I took my project manager in there. We spent $2,000 on the property. Oh, by the way, I asked him how much he wanted for a lease, and his answer initially was $0. He did stiff arm me into $220 a month because he wanted to cover the real estate taxes. But he was still making his mortgage payments, which he would have had to have done if he listed with a real estate agent. And I was covering the utilities and my $220 a month. So I had $220 a month in rent. We spent $2,000 to fix the things that he didn't want to fix, put it on the market. So on day 6 of my possession of this property, we put it on the market for $200,000 as is. And we had 14 showings that were scheduled within the first hour it was on the MLS. And we ultimately accepted a $200,000 offer with no contingencies. And it closed 28 days later. So in 34 days, I never owned the house. I never took deed to the house. And we net $36,000 off of a $2,220 investment plus utilities. I don't know what that was, right? But what's that rate of return, Eileen? On 36,000 on a couple thousand, what is that rate of return?
Yeah, it's quite high.
The answer is enough, right? It's enough. And Randy got everything he wanted. I got what I wanted, and I never owned the deal, or never owned the property. So it's not always about how you buy, it's about how you control. Okay. We did a different one, and this one I have a little bit more stacking in place because that didn't utilize a lot of strategies, right? We did a different one where this woman had reached out to me, again, moving out of state. She had, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, so I'm going to use round figures for your audience, but she had about a $65,000 first mortgage. She needed $10,000 cash, and she wanted $100,000, actually $105,000 for the property. So I figured I could put $5,000 into it and then lease option it to a buyer, about a 2-year lease option structure. So if you can follow this, we took over her $65,000 loan subject to. We gave her $10,000 cash, and she carried the remainder balance of the $105,000 price at 0% interest. And we had it so it amortized out to, it was about 6 years and, 6 years and 2 months or something like that. And those payments were $250 a month. But from a cash flow standpoint, when I put a tenant in there, that $250 a month, that's pure principal reduction. So that can be looked at as internal cash flow. The challenge I had there is, Eileen, it's against my religion to use my own money for anything. So I didn't want to tie up the $10,000 in cash that she needed. She was also behind on that first mortgage, so we had to catch that up a little bit. Just like 2 payments. It wasn't anything major. And then I needed $5,000 to stick into the property. So I called a financial friend of mine who I'm very nosy with my financial friends, meaning I know what's in their retirement accounts. I know what they want for rates of return, and we help each other. So I called up Dan and I said, Dan, I need $20,000. Talked through him all the numbers, and for $20,000, and we did this using a performing note, or performance note, I should say, meaning he gets paid based off of the performance of the property. So I gave him 25% of the future equity of the property, and he was getting 6% interest only return on his money paid out quarterly. And we get to keep all the rents and the cash flow. When the house sells in the future, that's when he gets his chunk. He gets his seed money back, and he gets 25% of the upside. And then we put a lease option buyer into the property who had about $5,000 or $6,000 down. Okay. So if you look at the whole structure, there was a subject to, there was a seller finance carryback. Then there was a performance-based note to my financial friend with his IRA. Then there was a lease option. And ultimately, when the house sold, everybody got paid. Everybody got what they wanted. I did it with zero money out of my pocket. My friend got a really great return in his IRA, Roth IRA, so it grew tax-free. The seller got what she wanted, her full purchase price, even though it didn't leave a lot of equity in the property, but she got her full purchase price. The end buyers got 2 years to fix their credit, and we helped them get a mortgage. And I don't know what our overall profit was, because I didn't actually prepare this today to talk about this deal. But again, it was enough. And that way we were able to hold a property longer terms. We had long-term capital gains taxes, not short-term, like the flips. So we need some of that depreciation in our businesses. So simple, right, Eileen?
That is a very, very creative way to stack on multiple different strategies to be able to create a win-win-win-win-win solution for all the parties involved.
So Eileen, how would you go about getting a homeowner to answer all these questions, right? Because we need to know what their goals are.
Yes.
Or we can't solve their problem. So do you have a problem asking a homeowner the tough questions, or do you feel like the homeowner would give you a hard time answering those?
A lot of times I think that people are closed up. So it's somehow getting them to open up a little bit and feel comfortable with you and answering the questions and getting to the root cause and what their needs are. And so it's about asking the right questions. But how do you typically go about it to be able to get down to the root cause to figure out the true need of the owners?
So what I do, and you have to kind of picture Wisconsin is a lot of rural area. Okay. So we don't have big major cities besides Milwaukee and Madison, and that's 3 hours away from me. So my markets are a lot of smaller towns and cities, 10,000 people to 100,000 people, right? But we'll work an area 100-mile radius. So I have a 200-mile diameter area that I'm going to buy and sell in. I'm not going to go and drive to every one of these properties every time we get a lead on a property. I need to know before I get in a vehicle, is this a really good chance that this will go under contract? So I got very good at talking to people over the phone and getting this out of them over the phone. Before I go to somebody's property, I'm 90% sure we've got a deal. Okay. So here's how I do it. Within the first 2 minutes of every phone call or every lead, when it comes in, I want to get this point across. So it's my elevator pitch. And what you need to do, your audience needs to do, is just find something that sounds natural for them. You don't want to say it the way I say it, because you don't want to sound scripted. Okay. But Eileen, if you're the seller, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say, Eileen, we buy houses in several different ways. All cash is not a problem, but that's typically going to be our lowest offer. If that doesn't meet your needs, we could look at taking over debt if you still have debt. I actually change that. We could take over your payments if you still have debt. If you don't have debt, we can make payments to you over time. And in some cases, we actually just rent your property and put a document in place to buy it at a future date. That comes into play a lot with landlords that are trying to offset capital gains. I tell you all this just so you know that we have multiple ways that we can help you today, but I'm going to have to ask you some questions that most people probably wouldn't ask you. Is that okay? End pitch. You can tell I've done that more than once, right?
Yes. And so it really sets the stage and the expectations for the rest of the conversation.
Right. So now 5 minutes later, when I'm asking you, Eileen, do you have any debt on your property? And if you listen to that again, Eileen, do you have any debt on your property? I'm saying it with a tone that is soft. I'm not saying, what's your mortgage payment, Eileen? Because that's more institutional, right? That sounds like something a banker would ask. We want to be soft in everything we do. We want to be always caring, always listening to them. I don't bring up my goals hardly ever, unless they specifically ask me what I want to make on a property. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It's all about solving their problem. I know inside my head what I can and can't do. I don't have to portray that to them. They don't care. They want me to solve their problem. So that's how we get these answers to these questions. And if they do get offended, and every once in a while, somebody's going to get a little bit, you can feel the tension, right? And you just revert back and you say, Eileen, I'm not trying to upset you. I'm asking you these questions because, again, I'm trying to solve your problem. And 99% of the time, that just de-escalates. It goes right back into asking more questions.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that, Derek.
Absolutely.
So, Derek, when you discovered this model and the different ways that you're able to create these solution-based strategies to help the homeowners, yourselves, the other people, the other parties involved, how has that really impacted your life and the way that you approach business and real estate investing?
I would think this might sound really cheesy, but we get Christmas cards from people we've helped over the years. We get referrals from, 5 years ago. Somebody will just call me out of the blue and say, Lisa told me to call you. Great. That's fantastic. I don't know who Lisa is. I have no idea. Right. I always try and leave value with every interaction I'm on, whether it's on the phone or in person. And over time, that just creates this atmosphere and this, the universe rewards us for being helpful. And we don't have to be slimy about it or take advantage of people or anything. People are in a bad situation. Great. We need to profit because we're not running a charity and we have families to feed. But that doesn't mean we have to, take advantage. And that has led myself to lead such a blessed life. The masterminds that we host now is all because people wanted to learn more about this. And then it started out as a group of friends. Our first mastermind was a group of friends. And we just said, hey, let's rent a really nice house somewhere different every 6 months, come together for a few days and help each other. And then other people saw that model and they saw how close we were, the tight-knit family we became. It's amazing when you stay in a house with somebody versus staying in a hotel and using a conference room, the difference. I can't even explain it. And so people start saying, well, how can we get involved? And we said, you can't. It's a closed group. Then enough people said that. And we said, well, if we started another group, would they join? And the answer was yes. And then that led to a third group. What we get to do today, my wife, myself, my business partner, and his wife, to travel around all these exotic destinations, hang out with people, help people, talk about what we love to do. It's not work. we get paid to do it, but it doesn't feel like work. And we would have never had that if we, number one, if we quit in 2007 and tucked our tail and just went back to our jobs. We would have, I'm so passionate about, you don't lose unless you quit trying. And that's what I try to portray to people, whether I'm on a podcast or on stage or one-on-one at the kitchen table. I'm coaching people that are losing their houses to foreclosure, or their grandma just died, or whatever the case is. And I'll tell them my story, and I'll tell them, this is what happened to me, and I made it back. Like, don't quit trying. It'll get better. I just think I'm blessed.
I have to ask also really quick, Derek, how did you overcome the mindset on your end to continue to push forward, even when things got very tough and you were at the lowest? Like, what was driving you and your will to continue to push through?
A lot of alcohol. No, I'm just kidding. Some alcohol. But for me, honestly, my dad passed away when in the middle of all that crap in, between 2007 and 10. And he lost his battle of cancer. And that was another thing while we were trying to grow a family that apparently we weren't supposed to have a good, easy time at, and grow our business or salvage our business. And, him and I had some conversations before he passed away. And I just, like I said, I was instilled with a certain work ethic, and I never wanted to let him down. So quitting was not an option. It was never an option, never will be. And that goes for my marriage too. There was plenty of times where Tracy and I could have took the easy way out and just said, you know what, we're broke. All these things are happening. Let's just leave each other. And it wasn't an option.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Derek.
Absolutely.
And so, Derek, I so appreciate you coming on, and I'm really grateful that you've come and shared your story with us today. And some of the knowledge that you've been able to share with us today has been incredible. The knowledge that you've shared with us today has been incredible. And so thank you for sharing some of what you've experienced so far in your career and in your journey in real estate.
Well, it's my pleasure. I truly do enjoy this. It's always fun.
And so, Derek, if our listeners also want to reach out, follow you, find out more, where's the best place that they can go?
The bar, and I'll be drinking. No, I'm kidding.
Which one?
Yes, all of them. No, I try and give back. So I'm currently writing and authoring a book on my own, which is about lending. And it's not published yet. We're working on finishing it here by the end of the year. And I'm co-authoring another book with a bunch of really awesome other authors. Again, that'll be published at the end of the year. So I'd love to be able to give those two books away to your audience, the electronic version. If they could just reach out to me and email me, and I do check my own email, and I'll add them to the list as soon as it's published. We'll send it out to your listeners. So that's simply my first name, Derek, Derek, at my company name, Best REI Funding. So Derek at bestreifunding.com. Just, shoot me an email that says, hey, I heard you on Eileen's podcast, put me on the list for the book. And if there's anything else, I can't say that I can answer every question immediately, but if somebody's got a deal structure and they just want to run it past me, I love that kind of stuff. I love talking about it. The other thing that we have going on is we do run an annual conference, and I don't know how much time we have, so I'll make it as quick as I can. But the people that I learned most of my creativity from used to run this conference, and they got in their 70s and didn't want to run the conference anymore. And it used to be on a cruise ship, and eventually it'll get back on a cruise ship when we can. But they very much voluntold us as they were stepping out that we had to take it over. We resisted that for several months, but ultimately we did take it over. And it's called the Generations of Wealth. It's going to be held in Cancun in February of 2023. We bring in about 10 to 12 speakers. It's a 5-day conference. These are all non-pitching speakers. We don't allow them to sell from the stage. Our conference each day runs from 9 a.m. to 1 in the afternoon. And these are all advanced strategies. These are all things that, are not how do I market? How do I wholesale? It's not that. This is the meat and potatoes. If you're from the Midwest, that would make sense. But the meat and potatoes of how do I really get to the next level? Those types of speakers. And then from 1 o'clock in the afternoon until dinner time and through dinner, it's open networking. It's people getting to know each other at the pool, at the bar, on the beach, whatever. And then we have some more interactive town hall sessions in the evenings. But what I really am super proud of, Eileen, is it's called Generations of Wealth for a reason. I want people to bring their kids. We don't charge anything for their kids. Their kids can sit in on any portion of the conference they want for no additional cost. My oldest is soon to be 16, and then I have an 11-year-old and I have a 5-year-old. They have a network of friends from around the country already that I didn't build until I was in my 30s, right? And this network of friends all have parents that are freaks like us that don't conform to everything that they learn at school, right? So the goal is for the kids just to build their network. They're not going to come into this advanced strategy conference and learn about how to use cash value life insurance to do, A, B, and C, but they're going to see the freedom that all of us entrepreneurs have to be able to go to a conference for 5 days, 6 days in Mexico, hang out, awesome, all inclusive, right? That's what it's all about. So that is, it's called Generations of Wealth. Website is gowvoyage.com. And I'd love to have some of your listeners join us.
Fantastic, Derek. Thank you so much and really appreciate all of your time today.
It's truly been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
And thank you for listening to our podcast today, brought to you by Bonavest Capital. We would really appreciate it if you can go to iTunes right now and leave a rating and written review. Also, please don't forget to subscribe so you can always get the latest episodes. You can also connect with us on Facebook, How Did They Do It Real Estate. We'd love to hear your feedback and any topics that you're interested in for future episodes. Lastly, to learn more about us, you can go to bonavestcapital.com and fill out the Contact Us page so you can speak to us directly. Nothing on the show should be considered as specific personal advice. Please consult your legal, tax, and real estate professionals for individualized advice.